Come along for the ride. Drop in if you want some salt, because I've got lots of salt to give. Hey! It's Leanne and welcome back to another video. Another video in which you might rightfully wonder if I am in control of all of my faculties. The answer to that would be no, just in case you were wondering. We are here today to do some tops and some bottoms. If you are new here, Tops and Bottoms is the way that I wrap up my reading month by telling you only about the things that I absolutely loved and the things that I absolutely did not. And this month there were a few things on the did not list that I did not expect. And there is also one teeth-achingly cute thing on the tops list that I think you're not going to want to miss. So let's all just get comfortable. This is your hydration check. Who's she kidding? This is an entirely full bottle of water and it's been here for 4 hours. Another very good example of do what I say, do not do what I do. Because what I do is ill-advised. Are we all comfortable? Good. Let's get started. She said confidently without an actual clue where she was going to start. Let's employ maths to figure out. We have, two things on the tops and 4 things on the bottoms. We have 4 bottoms and only 2 tops. Just like life. I guess we're starting with a bottom. Which I suppose means it's time for me to tell you my opinion on a book that I don't really want to tell you my opinion on. Oh well. Here goes nothing. I read Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman and I hated it. Hated it. Really didn't like it. I thought that would just like rip the plaster in one go, you know, like tear the band-aid away and then the pain would be lots but shorter. Did it work? Being real about this for a second, I have wanted to read this book for years, and if you are devastated that I didn't like it, think how I feel, because I am very, very devastated that I did not like it. One of those books that I held on to for, you know, the perfect time in your soul. When your brain and body are together ready to sit down and experience a book that you have been savouring. That you occasionally go past your shelves and stroke. Like one day, my child, it shall be your day, but today is not that day. Well, it was that day, and it was a bad day. Oh, how to sum up my feelings on this book. I do not feel any more articulate now than I did during my 24-hour readathons with my patrons where I was reading this book live, and every time we stopped to sprint I was like, there's something wrong with it, but I don't know what. As you see, this book is infinitely readable. The pages just fly past. I kept looking up and realising that I'd just eaten 50 pages and they were gone. And the writing itself, while a little more flowery than I would usually choose for myself, is whimsical and descriptive. It very much conveys that atmosphere of like a small paranoid backbitey town, but this one little haven of pure odd magic. So from that perspective it was great, but I did dislike quite a few things about the writing also. 99% of this book is telling and not showing. We are told a lot of the times what the girls see without actually being in their heads when they see it. We are told how people feel about things rather than being shown through their actions how they feel about things. And I think that's why this book is so short, because if we were actually in the characters as we were told this story, it would be at least double the length. I kind of felt a lot of the time like I was a stone skimming the surface of the plot and picking up little plops of emotion with it. I am told, however, that that is very much Alice Hoffman's style, and as this is my first Alice Hoffman book ever, I didn't know that going into it. And maybe if I had known I would have made a different choice, but I doubt it because I'm nosy. And I wanted to know what the book of one of my favourite films was like. Which actually leads me to another point, and that is the forced nostalgia in this book. That might sound a little counterintuitive given that I am somebody who does love the movie, and if you do love the movie and are coming to the book after it, then you would expect to feel a little bit of nostalgia. But that's the thing, I didn't go into it and discover nostalgia, I went into it and had nostalgia crammed in my face. Alice Hoffman does this thing right from the first page where she writes this novel as if you're supposed to already have nostalgia for it. She writes as if you should be predisposed to loving these characters before the movie was even a thing. It's as if you already have a history with them. So when they make some pretty nonsensical choices later on, you're just meant to go, that's just so Gillian. The thing is, Sally and Gillian as characters in this book were completely different from Sally and Gillian in the movie. And in the book, I had nothing that helped me be predisposed to actually liking them. And while comparison is absolutely unavoidable loving the movie as much as I do have to say that Sally and Gillian's relationship in this book just didn't do it for me. There is so much animosity between Sally and Gillian in this book that it almost felt uncomfortable for me to read at some points. When the sisters get back together as adults and Gillian becomes sort of omnipresent in Sally's life, and when later on Gillian became a massive influence on Sally's children, the kind of interactions that Gillian and Sally had after that were just kind of ugh. I really disliked seeing the two of them on the page together. It didn't make me feel good. So those were all of my issues with the book on its own, as much as I could taken without direct comparison to the movie. But if I am directly comparing it to the movie, I of course preferred Sally and Gillian's relationship there. I also preferred that the aunts were much more present in the movie. They had much more of an influence. They had a lot more screen time. And to be fair, I like them a lot more than I like Sally and Gillian even in the movie. And ultimately, I'm not gonna lie, I came away from this book with a really bad taste in my mouth when it came to just women being set against women, competition between women, and the idea that in order to be whole and complete, you actually have to be in love. And although I feel like Alice Hoffman tried really hard to show with the actual consequences of some of the aunts' magic that, you know, wanting things doesn't make them good for you, I feel like there was also a massive undercurrent in this of like a woman ain't nothing unless she got a good man. That said, I am kind of like weirdly curious about the other books in this series. There's just a little worm in my head which is like, maybe you should pick up the next one and see what you think of that, because I know that some of the books in this series are like prequels and then some are sequels, and like there's a weird reading order. I'm kind of a little bit intrigued, but then I kind of think that I'll just end up being furious. What do you guys think? Do you think I'll like the rest better, or I should just give up now? I am so very sorry if I have broken your hearts, but I said what I said. But in case that wasn't enough salt for you, we're also going to talk about another bottom here, because that's how maths works. The second bottom that we are going to discuss here today is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. House of Hollow, pretty much exactly like Practical Magic, was a bit of a weird read for me, because it was very much a book of two halves, or 2/3 in a big middle slumpy bit that I didn't know what to do with. And just like Practical Magic, it was also a very short book, like an incredibly short book. I think it was also less than 280 pages, which just boggles my mind, because how can such a short book feel so slow? House of Hollow is about three young women who are sisters. When they were very small, all three of them vanished from a street in Edinburgh right from underneath their parents' noses. They were found a couple of days later without any of their clothes or possessions and without any apparent memory of anything that had happened to them. But as the start of the book rolls out, we discover that their reunion with their parents was not actually as happy for everyone as everybody seems to think that it was. At the beginning of this book, one of the sisters is out running and she sees on the path in front of her a man with a stag's head, and suitably freaked out, she turns around and runs the other way, but when she looks over her shoulder, he's gone. When she gets home, however, pretty simultaneously and out of the blue, both of her sisters get in touch with her to say that they are coming home. And it is from there on that the plot rolls out. Now, I am just going to confess it straight up and say the reason that I loved the start of this book so much was because the vibes were immaculate. Krystal Sutherland does a really good job of like infusing the whole narrative with the feeling of decay, like elegant rot. Like all the good things in these sisters' lives were slowly crumbling, and every little piece they find of the mystery to their past is just covered with the smell of wilting flowers. It's very creepy, it's very ethereal, and if you like dark academia, then the writing in this is very similar to that tone of like intensity and obsession and overwrought emotion. But then as soon as the sisters got together and the plot became kind of a missing person plot all over again, I was just freaking bored. There was a weird sort of sense of urgency about some things where I was like, okay, that's actually not that important at this present time, and I don't really know why you care about it, and not a lot of urgency about putting the pieces together of something else that was becoming more and more apparent was a bad thing. I know that's really vague, but it's a really short book and I can't really tell you anything else without giving you massive spoilers. But needless to say, I was confused. I was really confused. Also in the middle bit we get introduced to this guy who is supposedly significant to the plot but who I hated from the minute that he walked on the page. I was just so bored. I was like, I do not want your plotline. I do not understand why your plotline is significant. I just wanted him to go away. And then unfortunately for me, this book was revealed to be a fairy book. And that could have been interesting, but it just wasn't. And it isn't even that I hate the trope of the fae or the fairy realm. I have seen it done really well in quite a few places. It just really did not work for me in this book. There's also some pacing problems with this book, which I think is pretty unforgivable when it's so incredibly short. But because of the way that Krystal Sutherland decides to do the whole fae thing, the big reveal in this one was not really a very big reveal. And in the end, I took way longer than I should have to finish this for something that was so tiny because I was dragging my feet on picking it up. So yeah, I did not enjoy and I cannot recommend. Now, let us reset our internal salt meters and talk about a book that I absolutely adored. It was the very first spooky book that I read for spooky season and it has definitely set the tone in that it has weirdly kind of stuck with me. I think about this book at least once a day and I know that quite a few of you guys have already picked this up because you've seen me talking about it on social media so much. So I can only hope that you have loved it as much as I did. And the book that I am talking about is The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. No, Jennifer McMahon. You guys told me in my TBR video that it was the Irish pronunciation of it and I think that that is correct. Jennifer McMahon. I think that's right. If I'm wrong, correct me again. I wish only to do justice to author surnames. And The Invited is exactly what it looks like, guys. It is a haunted house novel. But it is a haunted house novel with a hook that I have never read before and that was really, really nice. That was delicious in fact. To find a haunted house book that had so many things in it that I just jive with so hard. The Invited is about Helen and Nate. They are school teachers who have run away to rural Massachusetts to build for themselves a house in the style of the old houses that they like. Helen is a history teacher and she has a deep, deep love for finding out the history of the area. So when they move there, she starts to do research into their land and also into the town that they have moved to. And what she discovers while researching their land is that on the very site that their house is about to be built on, there used to be a house of a woman called Hattie Breckenridge. Hattie was hanged by a mob in town for crimes of witchcraft. And the rumours in town say that Hattie has not left, that she haunts the bog that exists just beyond their house, and that to anger Hattie is to invite certain bad luck and maybe death. And I mean, all of that seems like it's kind of, you know, the standard premise for a haunted house book, right? And it's not the only book that I've ever read about somebody building a house which ends up being haunted because it's on haunted grounds. But that's not actually why this house ends up being haunted. I thought that the whole plot of this book was going to hinge on the fact that they were building on Hattie's land and that is like a bad thing. But it doesn't at all. Because Helen is a history teacher, she starts going to like salvage and antique yards around about her town and like the places next to it and buying up old pieces for her house. For example, one of the pieces that she buys is an old beam that she puts as like the center point of their house. She buys bricks from an old mill that burned down for her fireplace. And in doing that and bringing all of these objects that were once important parts of this town into her house, she is actually building her own haunted house. She is infusing it with ghosts as she builds it. And she realises that she's doing that and keeps going. I can't tell you why she keeps going because of course that is a massive spoiler, but just knowing that she was building her own haunted house and kind of curating her own ghosts was absolutely insane to me. It was such a good plot point. I loved it. Add to that Jennifer McMahon's writing is just, it's so readable. It gives you just enough like eerie spook that you're kind of like, oh, I don't like it, I don't like it. You're getting the anxiety feels, but it never feels bogged down. It never felt like too wordy or too purple. I always felt like I was really turning the pages really quickly. So much so because I was listening to this one on audiobook while reading along in my physical copy. So much so that I sped the audiobook up past the point that I have ever sped an audiobook up before, because I was reading so quickly that I needed it in my brain. And we've had this debate here, guys. I'm not somebody who likes like a really sped up audiobook. 1.2 speed is usually what I go to. I was well past that, and I was living. On top of that, this book kind of takes place in 2 or 3 timelines, both of which initially seem to be in the present day, which is really odd. Like, I didn't know why she was dating the chapters after the prologue, because I was like, well, we know it's now, it's the present day, but then things start to change and the actual dating of the chapters means something, and oh, my mind just went poof. And then to top all of this off, this is actually a multi-perspective book. It's not just Helen's point of view that we're getting. It's also a young girl who is determined to find Hattie's treasure in the bog that we're following, and a few other things here and there. And just all together, it worked so well for me. I enjoyed it so much. I was so happy with it. And I'm also delighted to discover that Jennifer McMahon has a huge backlist, the most famous of which now I think is the Winter People. A lot of people have been talking about this and have said that that's how they found her and that's where I should go next. So if you are a fan, tell me if that is correct and if I should indeed do that, because I am already desperate to pick up something else by this author. If you like the kind of haunted house books that I like, then I definitely think that you should pick this one up. Okay, back to the math. The math says that means we have to talk about the next 2 bottoms. Yay! This is another one of these books that I'm like, you gonna get cancelled for your opinions on that one, girl. It's another book that just everybody loves, and it didn't work for me. And I am going to stop listening to the internet when it tells me that I need to pick up atmospheric young adult books. Also, she's playing with her spinny balls, and I'm not gonna stop her, because she's delighted with herself. Everybody should be so happy to play with spinny balls. So the next book, which I absolutely did not like, could you see me stop myself being like, I hated it, is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now, before you jump on me and call me a hater for not liking this, I've actually had a really positive experience with Holly Black in the past. I really love her White Cat trilogy, and in fact have talked about it quite a bit on my channel before. And so I did think that regardless of the premise or popularity of this one, I might like it as something that was easy to read. I had insomnia, I had my Kindle in my hands, and I had nothing but time staring me in the face. And I wanted a book that was going to be fantasy, but it was going to be pacey, and it was also not going to need a lot of my brain to process. And so I picked this up because it's what y'all recommended, and I wish that I had not. There's nothing else to say about that. I just wish that I hadn't. This one is another Fae tale, but I knew that going in. It wasn't surprise Fae. I knew what I was choosing to read. This one is about 3 young girls who, at the very start of this book, witness the extremely brutal murder of their parents and are literally whisked off to fairyland. Then we are quite abruptly shunted to like 10 years later, when the kids have been living in fairyland all of this time, and we see their very different reactions to being stuck there. For one of them, all she wants to do is escape. For another, all she wants to do is belong and be one of the Fae. And then for the third sister, an alternative choice is made. And of course, because this one is called The Cruel Prince, it does include a romance with a cruel prince, which I was also fine when I signed on about, but less fine when I left. This one, it is just Not for me. I was bored, and you would think that with an extremely brutal murder in the first chapter, which did indeed take me by surprise because I did not expect that to happen in the first chapter, you would think that I would be like more compelled to keep reading. I was not. I was not compelled. I was bored out of my brain. I also just didn't understand one of the main threads of the story, and that is just why Jude stayed in Fairyland in the first place. Given everything that had happened to her was still happening to her, and the horrible things that the Fae could make her do by like glamouring her, I just did not understand why she chose to stay there. It made absolutely no sense to me. And what made it worse was that there was so many characters and so many descriptions of so many characters and so many descriptions of what those characters could do to other people. There were also characters who we were all supposed to know about, and they would just be like introduced in like 3 sentences and moved on from, and then they were part of the plot, and I was just supposed to somehow be able to put all these details to a name. It was just so much. It was so much. It was like I had moved to a new place, but everybody in that place was under the impression that I had also been there for 10 years, and so I didn't need any backstory or any other kind of information to be completely at home in the world. Because I feel like Holly Black took on this massive concept and there was just not space enough in the book for everything that she wanted to write about, and it meant the book was really cluttered, the characters were really wooden, and none of the dialogue made sense. Like, none of the interactions made sense. And I'm just gonna say it, guys. I'm just gonna say it. I am all one for a tortured protagonist who gets to prove that they're actually worth something. But Cardan, no. He is just an insufferable arsehole from page 1. He treats people in such a way that I'm like, I don't know why anybody is giving you the chance to redeem yourself. And I think this might actually be my last try of Holly Black, because I have actually started a couple of her other books and not been able to carry on with them. And I just, yeah, I think I've given her enough chances. I'm just gonna stick with the memory of White Cat being great and just pretend that none of her other books exist. And then the final bottom on this list is also a book that I feel like I am somehow missing the hype for, and I'm really sad about it because it was actually one of my Patreon book club picks. Luckily our book club picks 2 books every 2 months, and I loved the other one, which was just as well, because I was really not a fan of this one. The book that I am talking about is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And guys, I struggled from like chapter 2 with this one, and my struggle was really just caring. And when so much money is on the line, I should care more. I should really care more. So this one is about Avery Grams, and she is a teenager who has a lot on her plate. All she wants to do is survive high school and get a scholarship to get to college and make an entirely new life for herself away from this place. She is an orphan, she is living out of her car, and she has a lot of various different problems going on in her personal life. And then one day someone comes to her school and tells her that she is the sole beneficiary of a complete stranger's estate. An eccentric billionaire has died and has left her his entire estate, despite the fact that he has living relatives living in his house right now who he has disinherited to do this. The catch to all of this is that Avery has to go and live in that house in order to get any of the money, along with all of those disinherited people who are still living there and who hate her guts. And if that wasn't enough, she has to solve a lot of dastardly and fiendish puzzles which are built into this house to find out what the mystery is and how this billionaire knew that she existed in the first place. Everything about this premise sounds like something that I should absolutely love, but I did not. And in fact, I was only 2 chapters in before I started hating the entire experience. Because here's the thing, guys. Is Avery a kid who has a lot going on for her, and does she deserve to have kind of a chip on her shoulder about everything in life? Absolutely yes. Does that mean that the entire narrative has to be cutting, sarcastic, bleak, bitter, depressing? No! It's not interesting to me to read from the perspective of somebody who is this baseline of angry throughout the entire book. If you already start up here with the anger, you have nowhere left to go, and there are no emotional peaks and troughs in this book. At least until the halfway point, which is the point where I gave up. And this is a problem that I've highlighted before, mainly with books that are described as like gritty and live in the thriller genre, whereby all of these bad things are happening, and so you're in the midst of all of these bad events, but there is no relief, there's no laughter, there's no comic joy, there's no moments of where the sun breaks through, and that's just not real. To me, it doesn't really replicate the human experience, because even if you have all these horrible things going on, you still have things that you like, things that you enjoy doing. You still will have hopeful moments and moments that you laugh in amongst all of this. And I don't know if it's just because of my own personal experience that I just can't be doing anymore with books that are just this one line of bitterness. But either way, whatever it was, I was really annoyed at this one. Like, I was really angry at it in several points, and it was making me as sarcastic and nippy as Avery was, and so I just decided that I was done. And it doesn't help that comparisons between this book and Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson cannot help but be made, because they're both, you know, about young girls who have to solve puzzles in sort of these strange environments. Both of them are in places that billionaires have built these complicated mansions full of like trapdoors and stuff like that. And maybe because I'm such a lover of the Truly Devious series, this one was bound to always fall short for me. So yeah, sadly that one was not a win for my book club. But thankfully the picks for this time around have already been better. But now finally here I am to tell you about my last top for this video, to leave it on a high note. And I guess this is where I should say that technically this is not just one top, but 3 tops, because it is in fact a whole graphic novel series which I absolutely ripped through last month. I read the first one twice, although it was kind of back to back, so I didn't mark it on Goodreads this time. I figured reading it back to back literally as I finished the last page was maybe stretching it as a reread. And it's really interesting to me that a top that I am so passionate about is a graphic novel, because it has been absolutely ages since I've read any new graphic novels, let alone talk to you guys about them. And although I have absolutely loved some graphic novels in the past, I don't think any of them have ended up being ones that I've been like, yes, this is a big passionate top, I love this loads. So the book that I am talking about is the Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. It is the first in the Tea Dragon trilogy, and they are all just as delightful as each other. In this one we follow Greta, and she lives in a fantasy world where for the most part things are very gentle, very peaceful. This whole graphic novel series kind of has this really like whimsical, gentle cottagecore vibe. Style in it feels really relaxed, really soft, really gentle. In this world, Greta is an apprentice blacksmith. Her mother is teaching her the family trade, and it is a trade which is very much falling out of fashion as swords and shields and things are needed less and less. And Greta is not very good yet at being a blacksmith, and she's a little bit frustrated with it and quite worried that she's never going to make the kind of beautiful things that her mother makes. When one day she is walking through the market and she happens upon a little creature who is being attacked. This little creature turns out to be a tea dragon, a tiny, tiny little dragon whose horns make tea leaves. She returns this dragon to its owner and confesses how fascinated she is by the little creature, and in return for providing its safe passage home, he offers Greta the chance to learn about tea dragons and to apprentice in how to make tea from their horns and how to look after them. And so Greta finds herself at the crossroads of the decision between whether she does this or whether she follows the blacksmithing career, which she's not very good at. Every single character in this graphic novel was somebody that I loved. There was not a single person that I was just like, I absolutely fell in love with everybody. Greta's mum has just such a beautiful spirit in the way that she teaches her this trade, and the way that she is allowing Greta choice but also trying to impart the love of this thing that she adores onto her daughter. And the owner of the dragon in the tea shop, Ezekiel, is actually in a queer relationship with a man called Eric, who used to be a hero. During his hero and adventuring days, Eric ended up being hurt really badly, and Eric is now in a wheelchair and helps to take care of the tea dragons. There's so much diversity in this series that's just very much scraping the surface. Honestly, the representation for different disabilities, for sexualities, for genders, it's just, I don't know how she managed to pack so much in to such tiny little volumes, and that's my only complaint about any of this series, is that it's over and that the volumes were longer, because they were just amazing. The overall arc amongst these 3 volumes is really about finding yourself and about finding what feels true to yourself, and about how you can be yourself but also be kind and supportive to others, about lifting people up and embracing their differences. The art is just so lush. This fantasy world just felt so real to me. I would also suggest that if you are a fan of Studio Ghibli, then you would probably enjoy this. It feels very sort of Kiki's Delivery Service to me. So all I will say is that if you love the idea of adorable little tea dragons, of beautiful illustrations, and of a fantasy world that is very low stakes, a la Legends and Lattes, then I think that you will absolutely love this one. And I have to say a profound thank you to my lovely friend Charlotte for getting me the first 2 books in this series. I'm just so thankful to have such lovely friends that are like, I know exactly the right thing to brighten Leanne's day, and they're always just spot on every time. So there we go, guys. That was a tops and bottoms. We did the thing. And the thing was very unbalanced. There were definitely more bottoms than there were tops, which doesn't really amuse me that much, although I think it probably amuses you given the amount of salt that I have just spilled on my desk and will have to sweep away. So if you've left this one being like, I need more tops, I need more recommendations, go and check out the last 2 vlogs, because I think you will find some in there that will absolutely work for you. There are so many different genres contained in them that you must find something. And as always, guys, if you have read any of the books on this list and you think that I am wrong, then leave your stinky opinions down below, because we love some stinky opinions on this channel. Or if you have read any of the books that I've loved and you would like to gush about them, also leave that down below, because we do also love gushing. And you know, if you have any recommendations for me based on the things that I loved, or even based on the things that are different from the things that I hated, I don't know where I'm going with this sentence, tell me about books that I will enjoy down in the comments below. If this is your first time on my channel, then please consider sticking around for more salt content like this. It does invariably come up every month. And if you've been here for a while and you like this video, then please consider hitting that thumbs up, because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to all of you guys really soon. Bye! Typical, I finished filming and you are not playing or being cute anymore at all. Don't work with children, be they furry or not. They are disappointments.